Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is our Let's Talk Arsenal series. Our show in which we're joined by a fantastic variety of brilliant guests to talk about our beloved club. And today is no different. I'm very happy to introduce to you this evening, first of all, from the Chronicles of a Gooner, it's Harry Symeou. How you doing, Harry? You good? You well?
Hey, mate. All good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. So I'm a bit warm. So, I mean, you're better suited to this than me. How was Turkey, by the way? Was it great? I know you enjoyed, went out there for the Champions League final. But what is it? What was it you said to me? A Greek Cypriot in Turkey is
Yeah,
no?
it's not the most comfortable thing. But no, it was fine. The people were nice. The weather was beautiful. Obviously, the occasion was a great one, particularly if you're a Man City fan. And it was just it's just a pleasure to be working on games like that. Like if you think, both of us where we started sort of with a YouTube channel or a podcast to be in a position where we're working on those kind of games is amazing. So yeah, it's an opportunity that you got to take, and I have to say I enjoyed the trip on the whole, even if Man City did win.
Yeah, indeed. No, it looked like good fun, and all the stuff you did with ex-players, Patrick Vieira and the like looked fantastic. So yeah, glad you enjoyed it. We're also welcoming for his debut on the channel a man that knows how to string out an introduction for the likes of Peter Drury, but I'm not going to string this one out much longer. It's Charlie Woollard from Haters. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
I'm very, very good, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. How did you find your, you've spoken to a couple of people in the biz, if you like, over the last couple of weeks or so. Has it been good?
Yeah, it's been different because I've not really jumped into the whole podcast scene too much, and then I got asked to host a few, and yeah, it's been going well. We've had Darmesh from Sky Sports on the first one, and then Peter Drury, which the first episode's out today, which is yeah, I mean, you mentioned Peter Drury and you go, wow, don't you? Incredible commentator. So yeah, mate, it was crazy.
There's only one commentator I rate more highly, and he's sitting in the top right-hand corner of this screen. So there you go.
No, not Peter Drury, man. Come on, I would have taken that on some others, but not Peter Drury.
Yeah, legendary. It's exciting to see him on Sky next season as well, and seeing him do some UK-based commentary more so next season. So Arsenal fans will be delighted with that, I'm sure. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to those joining us in the chat box, wherever you happen to be in the world. Thank you so much for doing so. So good to see so many of you, as always, for that. Got a brand new member as well. Diaz Ceballos joins us as well. So thank you for supporting the channel, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody else, of course. We'll be tackling some of your questions in the second half of the show, so make sure you save those up as well. But yesterday I chatted to Ben Jacobs about kind of the lesser spoken about names with Arsenal transfers at the moment, like Moises Caicedo, Xavi Simons. We're getting back to the headline acts today in the wake of course, Arsenal's two bids that we've seen going so far for Declan Rice. And then yesterday evening, I don't know about you, Harry, but I'm finding this very frustrating that news is dropping at like 11 p.m. at night. It's happening too often. It's really not my bag seeing this breaking news, but we learned that Man City had bids, their first bids around, I think it was 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. David Ornstein of The Athletic breaking the news. And then this morning, I think it was Jason Burt of The Telegraph around, I think it was 8:30, because I was literally just wrapping up my show as it broke, and we had to do kind of a Marvel style end credit scene to talk about it. But what have you made of the Man City involvement in the Declan Rice saga over the last 24 hours?
I've got to say, I didn't think the bid was coming. I wasn't sure that it was actually going to come. It was really, really annoying for me because I got my first call up yesterday to the TalkSport transfer show between 8 and 10. And I spent the beginning of it talking about how I felt that Arsenal had been disrespected and people had almost dismissed the appeal of Arsenal and Mikel Arteta's side. And I didn't say that Manchester City weren't going to bid, but I did say I'm starting to wonder how concrete their interest is, to use Fabrizio's phrase of the window, concrete. And then as soon as I get on the train to come home, after that, I get the ping of the dreaded David Ornstein tweet, which basically says that, of course, they've made that bid. Look, it's hard to know what to make of this, I think, because we'd heard that they were interested. It seemed to take them an age to actually make an offer. But at the same time, when you actually break it down and you think about the offer they've made, which is of exactly the same value overall as Arsenal's, albeit maybe on a different structure and maybe with more money up front, etc., it does beg the question, how serious are they? people keep saying, how serious are Arsenal? Because they know what West Ham want and they're just refusing to meet it at this point. But how serious are Manchester City to make an offer of a value that has just been knocked back for another club? It's all so confusing. It feels like a game of chess. And because it seems so complex, I'm sort of reluctant to jump to any conclusions with regards to what these two sides are trying to do here. I did jokingly say to Tom and some other friends in a WhatsApp group this morning that Mikel Arteta had picked the phone up to Pep Guardiola and asked him to make a bid just to show to show West Ham that actually 100
that's
million
happened.
is crazy.
That was confirmed to us today on TalkSport, mate.
And it was literally, and someone literally sat on national radio and said that today. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I don't know what to make of it at this moment in time. What I will say is I am sick of this whole thing. I'm sick of going through Twitter and reading nonsense information, people guessing stuff like the bid is going to be within the next 24 hours. We've been hearing that for a week. Or, you know, Declan Rice still prefers Arsenal, or, you know, Arsenal are edging closer to the £100 million mark. Literally easy stuff, like easy guesswork. That's what we're getting from so many different people because they want to be the first to say this or first to say that. And the truth is, I don't think anybody really knows exactly what's going on behind the scenes. I think it's a really, really difficult situation to read. And so I think I'm at the point where I'm just going to give up now and just kind of wait until we get a little bit more confirmation around stuff, because you can speculate every day, but we're going around in circles.
Yeah, no, we are. It certainly feels that way. I mean, Charlie, I'll get your thoughts before going into some of the specifics on the same line. So, you know, Man City coming in, they finally made that bid after so many suggestions that their bid would come. Were you surprised that perhaps the value of that bid matched the value of both of our first two bids? Yes, the structure was different and more favourable, and West Ham rejected out of hand, it seems. But were you surprised they actually went in at that £90 million figure?
Yeah, I was a little bit. But going back to Harry's point, that where he was saying he's getting a bit sick and tired of everything. Unfortunately, as we know, this is the beauty of not just the summer transfer window, but transfers in general. The amount of rubbish you'll hear all the time, even during the season, you'll hear that someone's in talks with someone. It's just part and parcel of a transfer window. And yeah, I was quite surprised because you see a club like Manchester City, everyone talks about how much money they've got and the presence they've got as a club, and they come in for a player like Declan Rice. It's obviously going to raise the alarms in and within Arsenal. But yeah, I think the problem is with this deal is it's such a big deal, not just in general the two clubs, within the Premier League as well. I don't think the Premier League wants to lose a player like Declan Rice, and when you've got two clubs like Arsenal and Manchester City fighting for him, it does take time, and that is the most annoying thing in the world. And going back to what I said on my introduction in this, we spoke to Darmish on the podcast, and we were actually talking about the different factors what happens of how you actually sign a player. And listen, I know I'm reading your chat here on the right, and you see all the time on Twitter about how frustrating people get. Why can't you just pay the money, pay the extra 10 million? It's not that much. It really, really is not as simple as that. And as much as, listen, we're all Arsenal fans here. As much as we just want to see that post from Arsenal and that says Arsenal confirmed Declan Rice, welcome to Arsenal, it does take time. It's a bit frustrating, but look, I don't know. I'm just a bit shocked that it's taken this much time. And you've seen Man City come in the race, and I've looked at it and gone, right, well, is this the dream over? But from what I've heard, and I think what we've all read, we've seen the fact that Declan Rice, I think, favours more a move to Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, Harry, I couldn't really. I was surprised, to be honest, by the 90 million total value of their bids, because yes, there'd been talk that they were considering, they were monitoring. My understanding of the situation from the Man City perspective is they were kind of monitoring it, seeing that Arsenal couldn't agree a fee and seemingly weren't willing to go to that 100 million valuation. And then to go in at that same 90 million figure, I know that what I've been a bit frustrated of is the coverage and kind of it's got a bit catty, if I'm honest, between some journalists actually online, I feel, in the last few weeks, in the sense of some are saying, I can't believe some people are saying that there's not much difference between the bids, or I can't believe that some people are saying there is, the bids are very different, because look, people have different information at the end of the day. But what I think is surprising is the fact that it is 90 million that they bid, and it wasn't closer to that 100 million, which is a very clear public valuation that they have. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, the amount, is the same. And however you want to dress it up and however you want to sort of break down the structure of it, ultimately West Ham would stand to receive the same amount of money from both clubs. So it's literally a matching of the offer. Okay, there's a few tweaks in it, the type of tweaks that you would feel obviously West Ham would prefer. Obviously, yeah, I get that. I'm not saying
Gone on mute.
some difference there. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. But yeah, it is strange. And this is why I'm stuck with this, because I don't know where this goes next. And again, tonight we've got reports coming out saying that Arsenal have verbally communicated to West Ham that they intend to make a third bid. But what have they been doing for the last week then? And this is the point. Like, all you're getting is just add-ons on top of existing information, just a little change of the wording, a little sort of slight shift of the angle. And the truth is that nothing has progressed to our knowledge at this stage. And that's what's frustrating about this. I think it would be a bit embarrassing for Arsenal if we don't manage to get this player over the line, given that so many are still reporting, even now, that Declan Rice prefers to come to Arsenal. In a weird way, Manchester City entering the picture the way they have with, having submitted a bid, it could benefit us in the long run, because if we do get this deal done, it looks like a massive, massive win for Arsenal. So there's clearly more risk now and more jeopardy going into the sort of business end of this thing. But at the same time, if we do pull it off now, I think we look great. And if Declan Rice does choose Arsenal, I think that is a real big statement. And that really does, I think, push Arsenal's sort of status up. And that's another thing I was saying last night, was the disrespect shown towards Arsenal and their appeal as a football club, and Mikel Arteta's individual appeal and everything else. It's driven me insane. So if Declan Rice was to make that decision, then I think it's a big, big win for us. But I can't give you any more, because I don't know where this is going. I don't know what the next stage is. I don't know, what comes next. I wouldn't put it past Arsenal offering below 100 million again. And I know people will say that's ridiculous and crazy and it's going to cause a big problem, but I wouldn't put it past them moving up to 95 million.
Well, let me throw that to Charlie, and I'll go full circle back to you, Harry, on that point. If the suggestions are, Charlie, that Arsenal are quote unquote getting closer to the 100 million valuation, in the grand scheme of football, the difference between 90 million and 10 million and 100 million, it's not a massive chasm, if we're honest. And I don't want to go into the semantics of, well, would you pay 101, 102, 103, you gradually get more. But if we are supposedly putting in a bid that's close to that 100 million valuation that is said what West Ham are apparently looking for, what do you think is stopping Arsenal from just going and hitting the F it button and just, putting in that 100 million pound valuation bid?
You know what, right? I actually had this conversation with someone yesterday. I think it's almost like the $1 million question, because we can all sit here, like on my first sort of answer, we can all sit here and say, just pay the money. You'll be surprised how much a club has like an exact detailed plan of how they want to process things. And remember, this summer, Arsenal are going to be spending a hell of a lot of money. Like, despite if we don't sign Declan Rice or not, obviously the backup plan, I guess, is your Caicedo or Lavia, but they're still, it's even if you're not sort of spending a 95 million pound, the thing that's frustrating me most is 10 million, like you said, in the grand scheme of the traditional market, isn't actually that much money. Like, it really, really is not that much money. When Declan Rice is costing 100 million pound in first place, you sort of have to question things. But again, this is the market that we live in. I think what's stopping it is maybe, I don't know how to explain it. I think it's more, it almost goes back to the old sayings of when people, like two businessmen are trying to fight for almost one price. It's going at, edging at the price a little bit. Like we'll bid you £1 more. Do you remember Luis Suarez deal years ago? Arsenal bidding
yeah, I'll just put it into the chat. We're going to bid 98 million plus 1 million. That's what we're going to do.
Exactly that.
West Ham deserve that. Good.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Yeah.
Literally. And I think the biggest problem is the fact that Arsenal don't want to just lay up £100 million at once. They want to do this whole add-on thing. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the whole add-on thing was the reason why it got rejected. Was not only just, it wasn't as close to 100, but the actual add-ons were too unrealistic.
Yeah. So
again, no one's really going to know exactly what's going on there. But I'll be surprised, if I'm being deadly honest, I'll be surprised if Arsenal bid £100 million. Like straight up, very, very, very surprised. I think with the add-ons, I think Arsenal's net bid maybe 95 million. I don't know what you boys think, but I just can't see if they're budging around like 75, 80, 85, 90. I can't then see them pushing in another 10 million unless they want to throw everything at it. But they've got a plan, and I don't think they want to go overboard. But in my opinion, 10 million, is that overboard? Probably not. But to them, it's probably a lot more than we see.
I think that they've already bid more than what they value Rice at. I don't think they value Rice at £90 million. And there were suggestions that I think have some credibility that at the beginning of the window, I think Arsenal felt a bid of upwards of 80 million would get it done, and it's not. And now West Ham, obviously, with Man City coming in, which there was always potentially a feeling that it would, and then winning the Conference League, which means they're in the Europa League for next season. Factors have obviously changed the situation. What I think Arsenal have done well to do is get the talking points of this deal from 120 million down to 100 million instead, because there were very real suggestions that West Ham wanted 120 million after that UEFA Conference League final. West Ham are buzzing because I think whatever happens, it's win-win for West Ham at this stage. Either they keep him, which they're more than happy to do because, at the end of the day, and this is how mad football has got, £100 million to West Ham United in this world of chaotic, what money Premier League clubs make, now being in the Europa League as well. It's not game-changing for them as much as it is keeping a player like Declan Rice, because they've got to replace the guy. And whoever they replace is not going to be probably close to as good as what Declan Rice is. And if they get the money, amazing for them, sure. But even then, I don't think 100 million in these day and age of football for a club like West Ham is game changing. We've seen teams waste money with that amount of figure on multiple players numerous times back in the day when players' value was even, lower. You think about Spurs, how they used the Gareth Bale money, for instance, they wasted that on players like Soldado and Nasser Chadli. I think they got one good player, which was Ericsson, out of that deal in the end. And, it's really easy to waste it. So I think from West Ham's perspective, they're buzzing because Man City have obviously now come in. But Harry, let me ask you that same question. I saw someone, I think it was Akmal in the chat, said, if Arsenal are ruthless, I'll try and find it while I'm scrolling up. I'm pretty sure it was Akmal. Said, why? Oh, here it is, Abdul, sorry. Akmal's one of our members. Abdul said, Tom, we have to be ruthless. They want 100 million. Offer it, and if they refuse it, we should just move on to the next target. I'm scared that we won't end up with either of Rice or Caicedo.
The thing is, I agree with what you were saying before. I agree with what both of you were saying. I don't think that Arsenal value Declan Rice at £100 million, and it's as simple as that. People will sit there and say, why don't you just pay the money? Why don't you just close the gap? If you want him that badly, it shouldn't be a problem. But that's not the reality of the world we live in. Arsenal Football Club operate in a certain way. And I've said this for months now. I've said it to you guys, Tom, on WhatsApp. I look at what Arsenal have spent over the last few years. I look at the fact that they've done all of that without having Champions League football, which has obviously left its mark on the finances. And I think there was always going to come a point where they were going to have to pull back a little bit on the spending. Now, we got to a point last season where we pushed for the Premier League title, surpassed everybody's expectations, I think even our own as a football club, and recognize now that if we can take that next step, we're actually a lot closer to being right at the top table than we were expecting to be at this point. But we need to invest this summer. And so what Arsenal are trying to do is to make that investment, but do it in a way that doesn't kill them, and in a way where they're almost gambling on these players being a success over the course of the next 2-3 seasons and recouping the money that way. That's how Arsenal are looking at it. If we can stay in the Champions League for the next 3-4 seasons, then spending this kind of money on Declan Rice, which we want to pay gradually, isn't a problem. People keep talking about the Kai Havertz deal. Why do we do that if we don't have the money to get the Declan Rice thing over the line? Yeah, there's a £60 million odd guaranteed fee, but I can guarantee you they're not paying it all in one go. And it will be the same with the deal that they're negotiating for Yuri and Timber as well. Arsenal are going to spend money, but they are going to spread that cost over a long period of time. That's the way football works now. I read something earlier today, Chelsea, £600 million spend over the last couple of windows. And I think they've only put down about £200 million of that up front. The rest of it is spread over a period of time. That's the way it goes now. It's a really, really common thing. And I don't think that the big issue is reaching the 100 million necessarily. I think the structure is more the problem for West Ham United. I think that they're looking at it and going, well, we want a lot of this and we want a lot of it up front and we want a lot of it within the first couple of years so that we can reinvest it. And I think that's where Arsenal are struggling a bit. I think they are a bit strapped for cash in terms of having big chunks of money to be able to put down on individual players. And that will sound crazy and people will slate me for saying that. But I really do genuinely believe that's the case. And it's why I've said for the last 2-3 months, it was never going to be Rice and Caicedo. Never. It wasn't going to happen. It was always going to be one or the other. And then they were going to try and do some deals around that. And so I'm not massively surprised with what I'm seeing unfold right now. Yeah, I agree with what you said, Tom, in that, like, in the grand scheme of things, 5-10 million in football is not the end of the world. And, sometimes you're going to have to take that leap of faith and you're going to have to knock things around a little bit to make that happen. But I also think there's a worry about setting a precedent. You look at Manchester United as a prime example of this, a club that have consistently overpaid for players, finding themselves now in a situation where they're trying to do a deal for Mason Mount, who's got a year left on his contract, has told everybody that he doesn't want to be at Chelsea anymore. And they're struggling to get that done for 50 million plus add-ons because of the Man United tax, because everybody knows that eventually United will back down. They did it with Lisandro Martinez. They did it with Anthony. And Arsenal are afraid, I think, of showing that side of themselves. I also think that Arteta and Edu play a big part here as well. I know it's ultimately down to the owners to sign a check and all the rest of it, but I honestly think that they're so strong in their principles that they have a limit with regards to what they would be willing to spend on certain players. And we've seen them walk away from deals before when they got crazy. And I'm starting to fear that if this one continues, and it continues to be a back and forth between us and Manchester City and West Ham continue to dig their heels in, that we might see this one get away from us as well.
Charlie, if for whatever reason this deal doesn't happen, and that might be either Man City get the player or he stays at West Ham because Arsenal are unwilling to reach a figure or a payment structure that West Ham want, how damaging is that to Arsenal, and how confident are you that they will react in this window to that hit?
I think that as a whole, it's damaging because remember, football tends to be run by the fans these days in terms of their opinion. So as a whole,
I use the word disaster to describe it.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's being polite, Tom. If I'm being honest, because it isn't a good look, is it? Let's be honest. This is a player that I actually like comparing this deal a little bit to your Jack Grealish, because he was at Aston Villa for a long time. He didn't want to leave Villa in a state. He wanted to leave as a not big difference to Rice in the sense of leave with a trophy, but he wanted to leave on a high, set things right, and move on to bigger and better things. And that deal was a little bit easier for Grealish because realistically, Man City just had the money to go, right, here we go. Aston Villa were happy. They could reinvest. And what Harry said a minute ago about, I think the biggest problem is just the reinvesting. It's the reinvesting. And Arsenal are really, really going to struggle because, like Harry said as well, the morals for Arsenal as a football club is not to just throw money away. And it's really damaging for that, if that is the case, because if they let this deal go, you then go, right, plan B. What is plan B? Because from what we've read this whole summer, and remember, this has been going for a few years because Arsenal have been linked with Rice for a long time, is what we want Rice, we want Rice, we want this, we want that. And we see other deals happening before your Declan Rice. So realistically, you have to look at it and go, right, is that actually your priority? Or is this the hardest deal to make happen? And that is exactly that. This is the hardest deal to make happen. Yes, it's the most amount of money, but realistically, out of all the players that Arsenal were linked with, you look at it and you go, well, from what we've read, Rice is more inclined to join Arsenal. Have any player, maybe Timber on the side. Timber looks like he loves the Arsenal, but I just find it, us as fans, we just find it so frustrating. And work aside, let's put work aside for a second. We sit back and we go, he wants to join. Arsenal want him. Like, just sign him. Just get it done. Just get it done. I can see literally your chat is just full with people like, oh, spend this amount of money or do this, do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, my question to you boys now is, what is plan B? How do we get out of plan A if it doesn't happen? Because that is, I think, as a club sitting down, because Edu and Arteta have their pull, they have their say. But again, like Harry said, the owners are the ones that sign the check. So realistically, where do we go? But yeah, to answer your question, it will be more than disastrous, because this is what Arsenal wanted for, I wouldn't say just this season, for a few seasons now.
Yeah, look, Arsenal have been tracking the guy for a long, long time, but it's only until now where they've had the capacity to be able to move for a player like Declan Rice and compete with players like clubs rather like City and Chelsea, United, etc. for that level of player. And if Arsenal can pull it off, it's a real statement signing, as Harry said earlier on. You mentioned earlier, Harry, the Rice-Sado thing was never, realistic. I think that was kind of born out of the fact that Arsenal had an interest in both players. So there was an assumption that Arsenal would move for both players. They moved for Caicedo in January, because if you were to get Rice in January, you were going to have to put bids upwards of 100 million. It turned out that was probably the same for Caicedo as well. Maybe Arsenal just still went for it anyway, but were told very swiftly that it didn't matter what they bid, it wasn't going to get the deal done. Do you feel as though maybe how the Caicedo deal for Chelsea has stalled? They're not willing to go to the asking price that Brighton won. I've heard on fairly decent authority that Brighton would be looking for around 80 million for Caicedo. Do you think that he would be the obvious alternative that they would move to if Rice isn't successful?
I think based on what we've heard, read, and based on the fact that we tried to get that deal done in January, you have to assume that. But I think we're wrong to assume what Mikel Arteta's priority targets are, because I don't think anybody thought that Kai Havertz was a priority. Yet here we are looking at pictures of Kai Havertz in an Arsenal kit with a bigger smile on his face than he had when he joined Chelsea, by the way. It is difficult to sort of know exactly who the target would be, who the priority would be. But I'll tell you this, if there's one club that you don't want to negotiate with if you're trying to save a few quid, it's Brighton. So that doesn't feel like it's a particularly straightforward deal to do either, particularly if Arsenal in their minds have a valuation that, again, they're not going to be willing to go beyond. I think it's really, really important that we just don't overreact right now, because, we could be sitting here in a week talking about Declan Rice joining Arsenal. We could equally be sitting here and saying that he's going to Man City. I get that, but the possibilities are open at the moment. And I think you got to take...
Mute again.
I don't know what's going on. It's like my mic disconnects when it feels like it. Is it back now?
It disagrees with you. That's
it's a Man City fan, Harry. That's what it is, mate.
Yeah, probably pulling the plug. Yeah, it's difficult to kind of to know how to feel right now, and I think it's important that we don't overreact, because at the end of the day, he could end up an Arsenal player, he might not, and I think we've seen Arsenal in recent seasons pivot really well from one target to another. So, you think back to last January, Mykhailo Mudryk was being spoken about. Everybody sort of went into meltdown when we heard that Chelsea had gazumped us in that one. And then we pivoted to Leandro Trossard, got him in, good value, good price, good player, come in and had a really positive impact. So I think there's a part of me now that wants to, and I don't want to say trust in the process, because I know people hate it when I say that, but there's a part of me that believes now that we have the right people in place to make the right decisions, and that there will be a plan B, and there will be someone in mind should this go in the opposite direction to that we want it to. So, yeah, I'm okay. I'm chilled. I'm cool with it at the moment. I am just growing frustrated by basically people pretending to know more every single day to drive a few clicks and some of the story. I mean, some of the stories. I don't want to dig out individuals. I'm sorry, but some of the stories, you click on them and you read them, and it is literally a regurgitation of exactly what they said a week ago. They just slightly tweak the headline to get everybody to click. Like, I know people have got a job to do. I get that. But I don't know. Some people love it and lap it up. But for me, I need to block it out right now because it's driving me insane.
That's why I asked him on the show tonight so we could talk about Rice. We're going to go to part 2 now, which is obviously going to tackle questions from you guys in the chat box. So if you've got a question, please use the capital Q. It helps them stand out and I can see them much easier. Before we do, I obviously want to give the boys a shout out. Harry, tell people where they can find you and what you're going to be up to.
Yeah, you can check out the Chronicles of a Gooner Arsenal podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Harry Symeou. You can find me on the radio. And yeah, I'm different places, different days. So 90 min as well. So yeah,
it's harder not to find Harry somewhere these days. So make sure that you are checking everything out that is on offer. Charlie, thank you for coming on as well. Great debut so far. I'm looking forward to the second half. Tell people they can find you and what you're going to be up to.
Yeah, first of all, Tom, we've known each other now for a few years, so I do finally get me invitation.
A few years? It's been about a year.
It feels like a few years.
Joking. No, I'm sorry.
I'm joking. No, thank you for the invite, mate. I watch this all the time, so it's class to be on here. But yeah, you can. I mean, where's my name? There we go. My Instagram is literally just that, and Twitter is very similar. I'm with Haters at the moment. We've got loads of cool podcasts coming out, some really, really exciting guests lined up. So yeah, you can. As Harry said, I'm here, there, everywhere. So I'm sure you'll see my face somewhere.
There you go. Make sure you check out Harry and Charlie's stuff. It's fantastic. That's why they're on the channel. Thing for me, just halfway through, I mentioned this on this morning's show, so make sure if you're not aware of it to please become aware of it. The end of July, on July 31st, I'm going to be doing a longest day golf challenge, which is 72 holes in one day, which is about 14 hours. It's the length of a marathon. You're just walking and playing golf at the same time to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Support. Of course, we sadly lost one of our very dedicated listeners last year, Vinny Eagle. Sadly died of esophageal cancer, and Macmillan was a big support of his. And in honor of Vinny, we're going to be raising money for Macmillan. So if you would please be so generous to check the link in today's video description to donate anything that you can. We would very, very much appreciate it. So thank you. Let's go to part 2 then and tackle the questions that are coming in thick and fast in the chat box. Let's go to, I suppose we should tackle this first. We've mentioned Caicedo, but Charlie, Rice alternatives other than Caicedo. Is there anyone else that you can see even matching up this summer for Arsenal to potentially go through that wouldn't feel like a bit of a disappointment, I guess?
Other than Caicedo? Probably Lavia, maybe. I'm looking at it like, I think, you know what? I'm not avoiding the question, but I'm looking at it like I see Rice alternatives and it actually makes me sad. Like, I'm not joking. It actually makes me sad because I think I've got my mind set on it completely. But yeah, I'm looking at, I heard of Fofana. I heard Fofana was thrown up there as well. Class player. I'd probably say, yeah, Fofana. There's a few people in the chat saying that as well. I'm not really going to. I don't really know a hell of a lot about him, so I don't want to spill off loads of stuff I don't know. But Fofana definitely, from what I've read anyway, that he's probably going to be the alternative. I don't know about you boys, but that's what I've read.
Yeah, Harry, any quick names before I jump a question to you?
It depends on where you see Rice playing, by the way. If you see him as an 8, then it changes things. If you see him as a 6, it's very different. At this stage, if we're talking about the 6th position, then I'm keeping Thomas Partey. I'm making sure that he doesn't go. And I'm going to take my time and I'm going to look around and find the right player. I've heard the name Fofana as well. Don't know an awful lot about him. So he wouldn't be one that I'd be rushing to. Frankie de Jong could be available, but for me, he's not really a 6, isn't really an 8.
Yep.
I don't really know what Frankie de Jong is. I just don't know what he is. Zubimendi, someone we've been linked with a lot, so I'd be interested to take another look at him, a closer look at him. I've seen João Palhinha coming up in the chat as well. Not sure he's at the technical level that we require, but certainly physically up there. But it's difficult because it feels like we're all in on Rice. We haven't even had time to think about anybody else.
Yeah, indeed. It's difficult to think about anyone else at the moment because there's just so much focus on it. We had a couple of super chats come in from Rahul, who says Man City are waiting for Arsenal's third bid to then go up on us. We've already spent 100 million with Havertz and Timber coming in. Give West Ham United Partey and take Declan Rice, says Rahul. I'm not sure I'm in favour necessarily of that one, but it's an interesting tactic. Harry Connor says, is Reece Nelson good enough to be the Saka backup winger? We've tried to sign a right wing for multiple windows now, and we seem to be relying on him.
He's good enough in terms of his talent, but I just don't think he's a right-sided player. I think he's so much more effective from the left. And yeah, I feel like you're taking something away from Reece Nelson if you put him out on the right-hand side. And I don't think it's necessarily fair on him. So no, I don't think he's the backup to Saka. I think Kai Havertz could at times play as the backup to Saka. I think that Kai Havertz could play through the middle and Jesus could be the backup to Saka on the right wing, which is a position he played really well for Manchester City for a number of years. So I think that we'll be able to give Saka the breathers he needs with the squad options that we're going to have at our disposal. But I wouldn't say Reece Nelson is the direct cover for him.
I agree. Moving to the next question. Thank you, Connor, for that. We've got Mr. Momo Man says, do you think, Charlie, our Chelsea and City signings are bringing experience for the Champions League, like Jorginho and Havertz, considering most of our squad has never played in the competition and Arteta, of course, has never been in the Champions League as a manager?
Yeah, I think what I was going to say on that with Arteta making these signings, I think bar maybe I'm not really a massive fan of Fabio Vieira. I think he's sort of got it spot on with, and again, Jorginho and Havertz were two names, especially Havertz, was thrown at us that we've gone, okay, right, let's see how they get on. And Jorginho's come in and done a really, really good job, in my personal opinion. And I think Havertz will probably do the same thing. I think that the big difference is not only obviously their play styles, but the money. Havertz is coming in on a much bigger budget than the Jorginho did. But the experience-wise is interesting because you've got Havertz, who was known for that Champions League winning goal for Chelsea. I mean, every Chelsea fan is going to remember that. And no matter him signing for Arsenal or not, I think every Chelsea fan is going to be very much grateful for that memory. But yeah, these are two players that have not only had Champions League experience, Jorginho as well, within the Euros. I know that's not very much loved with us England fans, but these are two players that played in massive competitions, in massive games. And when you go into Champions League or any European competition, you need experience. Arsenal have got a very, very young squad. Havertz coming in also quite young. Jorginho very experienced as well. I think for me, they're two players that not only had experience, but add a bit more maturity as well to this team. We've seen our squad mature massively the whole season, considering we finished second in the league, overachieved or bottles, whatever anybody wants to say about us. We've matured massively as a team, considering we bottled top four as such the season before. But yeah, 100 million%. These Chelsea and City signings as well. I missed that with Jesus and Zinchenko. Look what they added to us this season, last season just gone. I mean, of course, Jesus was out for quite a period of time with that injury, but the impact he had at the start of the season, from my personal opinion, let me know what you think in the chat, guys, but it was so cool to watch. Them first few games that he was playing was just elegant, the way he moves through the field. I mean, that assist he had at Bournemouth, if you remember that goal to Odegaard. I mean, that's the sort of level of a player we've got. And Harry's bang on what he said about Reece Nelson. Jesus is very versatile. Very, very, very. Jesus is very versatile. You can sort of move him around. And I think that's the same as Havertz. Zinchenko, a player that's a complete leader, not only experienced, but he just brings so much of his personality traits to the team. So bringing in these players isn't the worst thing in the world. It's a lot better to maybe the Petr Cech, David Luiz sort of vibe and the Willian vibes that we had from the last few years. These are a bit more of a step up.
Indeed, yeah. I think even if we were to sign Rice, you add Timber as well to that. Havertz is the signing that excites me the most because I'm so intrigued about what we might do, what talent we can extract, and when seeing him at Bayer Leverkusen, appreciated as probably the best young German talent of his generation, at that age, at that time. If you can harness that ability, you've got a hell of a player on your hands. Going back to the Rice thing, Tom says we might already have a plan B to Rice. Ben White, Timber and Tomiyasu take the right back role, so keep Partey and bring in Lavia and we're sorted. Potentially, it still feel like we need more quality for a season, back in the Champions League next year though. First Last says, Harry, do you think spending big in previous summers has now caught up to us on our available funds this summer, especially with the paying for previous deals over multiple years?
100%. 100%. I've been saying it for a little while. I think it is an issue. I think it is a problem. I think for all the good work that KSE have done, they haven't completely changed their operating model. I think they've made adjustments and I think refinanced some of the club's debt in order to make more money available over the last few years when we were without Champions League football. But I don't think their business strategy has dramatically changed in terms of them now going to their pockets and lining us up with cash to drop on players. I think they know that the club can make the money over the course of the next few years, hence why they want to spread the cost of these deals. And I do think it's caught up with us. I really, really do. Now, that's not necessarily something we should throw our hands up in the air and complain about, because it was always kind of coming. But it is the reality of the situation we face right now. I think, again, as I said before, we will spend money, but we need to do it in a way whereby we're very careful with what we put down in the first place. And then we need the strategy to work, because we're going to be paying for this for the next 3, 4, maybe even 5 seasons.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting point. I mean, let me follow it on to you, Charlie. We talk about, these payments catching up with us. The obvious thing I can imagine people will be thinking, but Stan Kroenke is a billionaire. Like, why are these payments, why are these summers catching us? Why are we not, with a very, very wealthy owner, spending more money?
Because, again, football clubs are run in all different kind of ways. Every club sort of runs on a similar structure, but with Arsenal, it's a sort of, they don't want to splurge too much cash at once. The one similarity every football club will have is majority of these big money spending. So like Grealish's and even Arsenal's one, Nicolas Pepe, is all split between different payments to make it a lot easier to fund for the club. And again, yeah, it is catching up massively, I think, because Arsenal, don't get me wrong, I've spent nowhere near the likes of your Chelsea, but they've spent a lot of money, and it's not just one check and you give it and you hand it in and that's it. You've still got to be paying things back. It's just like all of us when we've got to pay our bills. It all comes to you at some point. Can't run away. And yeah, it is. It has caught up to us big time. I think 100%.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much Arsenal end up investing in this window. Obviously, it's going to be structured. The investment that we pay in this window is not going to be 60 million for Havertz, 40 million for Timber. You're going to pay those in installments, then you'll be paying those back, in future windows as well. So I've always said I feel like this is the window for Arsenal to go big, and then you look at more self-sufficiency in the future, even as soon as 2024. But for me, I feel like this is the window that Arsenal should be going big, getting in the 5, 6 maybe players that they need, and then in the future windows you're adding 1 or 2 or a push 3 to the squad. But this is the window to really kind of grab hold of. Efosa says, what do you gents think about Arsenal not putting in any bid until Man City made their second bids? Ideally, Man City bidding 100 million, Arsenal's bid matches that, and then Declan Rice decides. But I suppose, Harry, that's kind of a question around, should we wait for our next offer to go in when Man City make their second bids if it's accepted?
No, for me, we just need to get on with it. I understand what people are saying.
That's because you're bored.
Well, yeah, partly that. Yeah, partly that. But I think, look, if we believe what's been written, which is that Arsenal put loads of groundwork into this, convinced Declan Rice that it's the place to come, and Declan Rice now believes that Arsenal is the best choice, which is what we keep hearing. I'm not even saying that he would pick us 100% over Man City. It's just what we keep being told. You know, those articles I keep referring to that keep recycling the same old stuff. That's what I'm talking about. If I'm Declan Rice and I know that Arsenal know what they need to pay, and you've just spent the last 6 months telling me how much you want me and how I'm the center of this project, I'll be looking at this thinking, what are you playing at if it drags on for too much longer? I think at the moment we're still within that period of time where it's acceptable to negotiate. It's early in the window. Declan Rice knows how it works. He's not silly. He knows it's a business. He knows Arsenal want to pay as least money as possible and West Ham want to gain as much money as possible. But I think there would come a point where if Arsenal allowed Manchester City to go past them in the race, Declan Rice might look at it and go, how bloody serious are you about signing me? How important am I to you? And how much of a priority am I actually? So I worry that if we dwell on this for too much longer, you're not just risking having a breakdown in the relationship with West Ham and the negotiations becoming more difficult. You're also risking sending the wrong message to the player who, as we understand, you spent ages trying to convince and you've spent ages sort of propping this project up to. So I don't think Arsenal can afford to wait now. I think Arsenal have to make the next offer. I think they have to speak to West Ham and make sure that whatever offer they put in formally is going to be accepted, or don't put one in at all and walk away from it. It's one or the other now. If you want the player, find out exactly what it's going to take, put that money down and get to the next stage of this transfer, which will be hashing out the personal terms once you've got the agreement from the club. The longer we stay in this limbo, the more risk we run of Manchester City sneaking past us, taking him, convincing him that Arsenal aren't that interested or aren't as interested as they say they are, aren't as serious as they said they were. And that gives them even more ammunition in the battle to convince him that theirs is the right place to go. So I think we need to get on with it.
Rahul says we just made 150 million coming second in the Premier League, 35 million from the Europa League. TV money next season will be higher, and so will gate receipts. I think we have enough money since we aren't giving the whole cash up front. What I would say is people are very quick to forget about the outgoings. We have to actually, there's expenditure, being a football club that you have to pay a lot of money for. It's not just investment in player transfer fees, it's wages, it's the intermediaries that are paid for, the staff at the club have to be paid for, the running costs of the Emirates Stadium are paid for. People just assume that you make this money and it can just all go on players. It's not the reality. There is so much else that needs to be paid for. So yes, we're a very wealthy club, and yes, you'd say on paper that we should be able to compete with the Chelseas of this world spending stupid amounts of money, but there are drawbacks that we have spent poorly in the last 10 years on players. We have not sold well enough in the market either, and that, as well as what Harry talked about earlier in terms of what we are paying in terms of structures catching up on us, yes, but also the fact that we have not made enough money in the market is going to catch up with us as well. Few more before we wrap up. Marcus says, Charlie, why would we loan Holding? This, of course, comes off the back of a report from, I think it was Joe Krishnan of the Express earlier on today, suggesting that Besiktas are in talks over a potential loan move for Rob Holding. Marcus says, sell him and add that couple of million to help with the Rice deal.
Marcus, I mean, a lot of Arsenal fans, not really a big lover of Holding, but unfortunately, from what I've read, Arteta is a massive fan, and what we've seen over the years, his commitment to the club has been fantastic. He's that man that we bring on 5 at the back when we need to go for the 3 points, and he's come on when the likes of Saliba or Gabriel have been out, especially Saliba. But again, I wish it was as easy as that to sort of loan or sell, and then that couple of million could sort of push it over the line. But I think the boys will agree with me here. I don't think it's quite as easy, and that's how it sort of works. But yeah.
Fair enough. One more question. We got 2 questions that are kind of one. Natnail says, Harry, Tom, my fear is that if we keep missing our first targets again and again, Arteta will start to get frustrated. With all those big clubs looking for a manager at some point, Arteta may plan to move. And there was another question that I should have starred and I didn't, but it basically asked something along the same lines around kind of I think the question was something, do you think there could be friction built between the manager and the owners if players like Rice aren't secured?
Yeah, eventually. I don't think we're at that point yet with Mikel Arteta. I think he's still very much on board. He still understands where he's at in his career as well, I think, and the fact that he's still on a learning curve too. But there will come a point where he will grow frustrated and he will look at some of the other clubs and think, well, if I go here, I've got the tools to be able to win the biggest trophies. And make no mistake about it, Mikel Arteta is an ambitious guy. He wants to be regarded as one of the best football managers on the planet, and he's not going to get there unless he wins the big trophies. And if he gets to a point where he feels like that's no longer possible at Arsenal, then yeah, we run the risk of losing him. We really, really do. It's the thing is, the football landscape is changing, and I know this is a wider debate. You could probably do a whole podcast on this, but we're getting to the point now where ownership is everything. And yes, I think we're proud of the way our club is run and the values that our club upholds, but we also know the reality, and the reality is that there is going to be a time where we can probably no longer compete with state-run football clubs. And, you know, there's talk about the Qataris potentially getting hold of Manchester United as well. I mean, they're a big enough juggernaut as it is financially. Imagine with that backing what they'd be. So there's Man United, there's Man City, there's Newcastle, who eventually you feel are going to put all that into practice. You know, how do you keep up with those football clubs? And the gap is getting bigger, not just between Premier League clubs, but between the Premier League and all the other leagues in Europe as well. And you're going to get to a point where you're just talking about a completely different landscape and a completely different game. So I think although we can be frustrated with our ownership and we can be frustrated with the fact that maybe we don't have the money to do all of these deals, I think we have to just acknowledge that the reason for that is probably to do with the wider football landscape rather than just Arsenal not being run right. And I think if you can accept that, then you can accept the reality, and then you can understand why we are where we are.
Absolutely. We're going to round the show off there. Thank you, everyone that's tuned in to today's episode. It's been very enjoyable indeed. Fantastic answers and words from my two guests today. Firstly, Harry, thank you so much, mate, for your time. Very much appreciated. Tell people they can find you, my friend.
Yep, check out the Chronicles of a Gooner Arsenal podcast, and you can find me on Twitter at Harry Symeou, where you'll see whatever I'm up to on the day.
Absolutely. And yes, it's felt like years that he's known me now, supposedly. But Charlie, thank you.
Gonna hold me to that now.
That's never going anywhere. But thank you, Charlie, for your time. Really appreciate it. Tell people they can find you, mate.
Like I said, yeah, here we go. I got it right this time. This is my name. You can find me here on Instagram, and my Twitter is very much similar. Woollard TV. And like I said earlier, you can see my face sort of everywhere. Got some really, really exciting projects coming up ahead of the new season, the chaotic new season that we're all looking forward to. With hopefully, we'll be reporting about Declan Rice's Arsenal shirt. You never know.
Keep our fingers crossed. So you can be sure that we'll be covering all of that and more on the channel, as will these boys on their own too. So make sure that you are subscribed to Haters and, of course, Chronicles of a Gooner as well. Please do drop a like on the video if you haven't done so already. If you're new to the channel, welcome, first of all, and please do subscribe. I hope you're enjoying the content. There won't be any evening shows for the next few days or so because I'm leaving for Denmark tomorrow, but there will still be, I'm hoping, if the hotel Wi-Fi is good enough, the 8 a.m. shows will still be running. Still going, Harry. It's still going to be running them, even though they're different
Tom,
countries.
just go on holiday and have a break, man. For God's sake.
I've told him that as well.
I can't do it. I'm obsessed.
Just go to bed, right? Go to bed at night. Don't think about the 8 a.m. show. Get up at 9 a.m. Go and enjoy your holiday for a few days and come back, and the kingdom will still be there. Don't worry.
Look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away. I'll miss a day, and then all of a sudden, Chronicles of a Gooner have an 8 a.m. show going on. That's what's going to happen.
You don't have to worry about that, because there's not a chance that I will sit in front of a camera at 8 a.m. on a daily basis.
Only I am that mad, it seems. No, thank you, everybody that's tuned in. I'll be seeing you tomorrow morning before I do head off to the airport. But I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate massively Charlie and Harry as well for jumping on once again. And we'll see you again very soon. Have a fantastic evening. Enjoy yourselves. And as always, stay safe, stay well, and up the Arsenal.